Hello there, welcome to saberduelgaming, where we always take the high ground. In 1993, StarFox introduced 16-bit console users to the Super FX chip. This new piece of tech allowed the 16-bit console to render 3D graphics as well as 2D special effects that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. For most people, StarFox is probably the game most synonymous with the chip, and for many, maybe the only one they can actually reference that used it. However, many other games did tap into it also. Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island made fantastic effects due to this chip. And today, we're going to take a look at another game that made use of this FX chip, with Stunt Race FX, our retro review. Despite its debut and greatest success being in the StarFox game, the Super FX chip was suddenly hurled into the world of racing games. Dirt Racer made decent use of the FX chip with average ratings. However, Dirt Track's FX absolutely tanked with abysmal scores. Despite this, Nintendo seemed determined to press forward and create a racing game using the FX chip that would be far more successful and in many ways really give the feel of games such as 1992's Super Mario Kart. A more family-friendly, animated and engaging racing game that maybe didn't take itself too seriously, and with this, Stunt Race FX was born. Rather than having characters in vehicles, Stunt Race FX took the approach of making the vehicles themselves the characters, similar to what we would see in movies much later down the line such as Cars. These animated vehicles with eyes for headlights and loosely connected tyres that always seemed on the verge of falling apart from the body of the vehicle were unique in appearance and certainly gave a feel that was enough to attract the audience. And visually, you could clearly see the use and benefit of the Super FX chip, both in the animation of the vehicles themselves, the movement of the surroundings and the overall graphics. It was so clear to see that the tracks themselves just had such a similar look to StarFox. Many of the bonuses and pickups, the flashing lights telling you which direction to go, just looked identical in many ways to what we'd seen in StarFox. Maybe this was a deliberate choice, maybe it was just how the chip animated these things. Either way, it certainly seemed to be designed to harken back to StarFox to make people feel like it had that level of quality. And I think it's fair to say that the Super FX chip was integral in it being able to have graphics like this. The Super Nintendo, despite being a fantastic little system, would never have been able to put together graphics, gameplay, and animations like this without the use of that chip. So surely that meant that overall, that was a job well done. The game focused obviously very heavily on racing, with both 1 and 2 player versions of the game available. It also had time attacks, where you could try and beat your own time or time set by others. The game also included obstacle courses and test tracks for just getting used to the game and getting used to individual cars. So how was it received at the time? Well, by 1998, which 4 years after the release that is, it had sold 1 million copies, and even in 1994 when it was released, it was the top-selling SNES game in the United Kingdom. Also, on first glance, all scores that it was given when it was rated at the time were between 90 to 95%. However, that doesn't quite tell the full story. Interestingly enough, all of the magazines that use scales other than a percentage, that use a 5-star, 10-star rating or scores out of 5, averaged between 75 to 80% when translated over. That's a bit of a drop down from 95%. Magazines such as Game Zero said that the controls were out of this world and that the graphics, thanks to the Super FX chip, were superior, supposedly to many other previous racing games and even StarFox itself. However, others contradicted this quite severely. Electronic Gaming Monthly, for example, commented that this was actually quite a disappointment, especially when compared to StarFox. That the controls were touchy and the overall feeling of speed kind of important for a racing game just wasn't really there. Despite this, Total Magazine, one that I was an avid subscriber to, actually ranked this 21st in the top 100 SNES games of all time, that in 1995. They even commented that graphically it was miles ahead of Star Fox, something that even at the time I wouldn't have agreed with. However, even more recently, as of 2018, Complex and previously IGN had continued to rank it in the top 100 SNES games of all time. But how does it stand up now to modern scrutiny? Okay, prefacing this by saying, as I have mentioned before, I am not always the biggest fan of racing games, but the ones I do like are the more entertainment focused ones, like this, like Mario Kart, like Wave Race. But this game? Geez, I just don't see it. I can see what people were talking about when they said that it just doesn't really feel fast. The controls are laggy and awkward, and overall, I find the graphics quite obnoxious. They're not ugly, they're not unpleasant, but they don't make me want to play the game. If anything, the graphics tend to get in the way, making it rather hard to know which way I'm meant to be going. I found myself going left and right, struggling to control the vehicle through awkward controls and not being able to tell where in the hell I was meant to be going. After games such as Mario Kart and plenty of others we'd seen such as Street Racer, limiting us to 3 vehicles? That was kind of offensive. Surely you could have prevented that by just throwing in 1 or 2 more colour changes, just something. Overall, I really didn't enjoy this game. I played it a little bit on release, didn't particularly like it then. This was one of those that I'd rented out and instantly regretted renting. Now going back and playing it years later, I can see where I was coming from. When I'm playing games like this, and especially retro games looking back now, I don't expect the graphics to hold up to what we have today, but I also don't expect them to hinder the gameplay. The weird screen going around the actual screen on which we're playing is also very odd as a choice. It's kind of as if I'm playing a handheld game on a modern emulator or something. I know part of it is there to tell us my speed, damage, etc, but it also feels like the main reason it's there is to limit how much graphical input they need to make, making the game smaller and more contained. It just makes it more awkward to play, and overall those controls are not good. They had years worth of kart and racing games being made. Hell, the Super FX chip had already been used twice in previous games as mentioned earlier. How the controls could be this poor, and people had been so accepting of it, I just don't understand. Maybe at the time people were used to bad controls at racing games. I really can't comment as someone who was never a big fan of them, but trying to go back and play this game now was an absolute chore. There isn't a massive degree of variety on the screen that you're seeing because quite frankly, I didn't want to play it any more than I had to. I can see some beauty in the stills and the graphics when I'm not having to play it, but overall, it's just nowhere near as impressive as Star Fox, a game that came out 2 years earlier, was. While again, I'm not a huge fan of racing games, that doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to enjoy them at a basic level, and there's plenty of them that I do. This game really just lets me down on that. I'm not sure why, but I just don't take to it. Overall, Stunt Race FX, I can see what they were trying to do, but for me, I can't give it more than 4.5 out of 10. It was not fun to play, it was not fun to handle, not fun to control, and even visually, it just wasn't as impressive as other games had been. But a lot of people were huge fans of this game, so if you were, please comment below, let me know, what was it you liked so much about it? And until next time, take the high ground.